and today I'm going to show you some tips for better binding. You want to put on your walking foot on your machine. Mine is already built in, and I'm using some cotton quilting thread. The first tip is to zigzag all the way around your quilt top once you've finished it to really help you to get that even binding. We're going to start by showing how to get a really good mitered crisp corner. I'm going to stitch down my binding on the front of my quilt. And I'm stopping right about 1/4 inch away from the end. I'm going to do a couple back stitches to secure my thread. Clip your thread. And now you have about 1/4 inch away that doesn't have any stitching. This is to help you to be able to manipulate your binding to really get a good crisp corner. You're going to fold your binding up and then back down. And if it doesn't quite line up, that's where you want to refold it and work with it a little bit until you get a really nice corner. Once that corner is set, you're going to start stitching this way all the way down your quilt. I like to do a couple back stitches in the beginning. Let me show you what that corner looks like. So this allows us the ability to be able to fold it to the back and really get that nice, crisp miter corner we're all searching for. Another tip for binding is getting that nice final join, which can be tricky when you're trying to get that 45-inch seam. My favorite trick is to start by putting your first piece of binding down. I've already sewn it all the way across my quilt. I've left about 6 inches of room. This allows me the ability to make that final join without wrestling all of the layers a little bit too much. This is where I've finished, and I'm going to layer this on top. Measure the distance between where you started and make sure that it's the same width as your binding. My binding is 2.5 inches wide, so I'm going to clip this top piece 2.5 inches. What I like to do at this point is to take my first piece of binding and give it a nice little finger press back. This makes sure that I can layer it nicely and I know how they're going to lay together. This part is a little tricky. You want to grab all your layers and fold your quilt in half so you're able to have enough room to sew them together. Because I finger pressed my space on the first one, I have a nice line that I can follow where I'm supposed to stitch together. I like to always make sure and check to make sure that it looks nice. But look how flat that's laying. The last thing I have to do is make sure I cut all the extra off so that it's going to lay really nice on my quilt. There you go. My last binding tip is how to get a really nice machine-bound quilt. The first thing I've done is I have used these binder clips. I really like them because you can get them at office supply stores and they're really sturdy. I've sewn the binding on to the front of my quilt, and then I've pressed it flat and I've pressed it again to the back. I like to set my foot so that my needle is about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch on my binding. And I'm going to take it slow and machine bind it from the back of my quilt. I like to find a spot, whether on my foot itself or on my machine, that I can follow as a guide to make sure I'm keeping that line nice and even and straight on my binding. pivot the corner, and continue on the next side. You're going to want to continue to do this all the way around your quilt top. The benefit of sewing your binding on from the back is you get this really nice, even line of stitching on the back of your quilt. And a really nice, even line of stitching on the front as well. So those are a couple binding tips for you today that you can take and use to get that perfect finish on your quilt.